So let's bring in our panel early. Fox News senior political analyst Brit Hume, former Education Secretary Bill Bennett, and Harold Ford Jr., former Tennessee Congressman and CEO of Empowerment Inclusion Capital. Gentlemen, thanks for being here. Brit, I want to start with you. That line from Secretary Blinken in this hearing, that we inherited a deadline, but we did not inherit a plan. Your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I'm sure there wasn't any kind of a plan. But the truth of the matter was there was no meaningful deadline, and the proof of that is that the deadline, such as it was what, May 31st, and that was extended until what, the end of August.
August 31st, yeah.
May 1st, August 31st. So basically what they're arguing is we had to get out on August 31st because we're under a deadline to have gotten out several months earlier. Well, obviously they were free to extend the deadline for as long as they wanted. Moreover, the deadline was part of an agreement that had been reached with the Trump administration, a weak one in my opinion from the U.S.'s point of view, but an agreement nonetheless that had conditions in it. And the conditions had plainly not been met, to include the condition that the Taliban would have reached an agreement with the Afghan government. Negotiations on that never started. So the idea that they were under a deadline that a meaningful deadline on the 1st of May is nonsense, and everything that's predicated on that is therefore nonsense as well.
What's striking was the different numbers about the people still on the ground, the people the Americans, the green card holders, and then the SIVs. These are with the immigrant visas, special immigrant visas. Take a listen to this Q&A with Congressman Zeldin.
What is the number of Americans who are in Afghanistan as of the last update you received?
The Congressman, going back to this weekend, we had about 100 American citizens in contact with us who seek to leave Afghanistan. Those are the Americans we're working with.
Do you have an exact number?
I can't give you an exact number. We were talking about this a little bit earlier. It's really a snapshot at any given moment, because what happens is—
I asked you as of the last update you received.
Yeah, as of the last update, it was about 100.
Okay, how many green card holders?
Green card holders is something that we don't track directly. So what we've done is we've solicited people, if they are green card holders, to let us know. I think the best estimates are that there's several thousand green card holders in Afghanistan.
Billy went on to say they didn't have a number. States working on a number about the special immigrant visas. These are the Afghan allies who worked with the U.S. over 2 decades of war, perhaps the most threatened by what's the situation on the ground. The big thing is that we are hoping that the Taliban agrees to let them all out.
Yeah, we're hoping. We're relying on the goodwill and good faith of the Taliban. And as Tony Blinken put it, some of them, the leadership now has challenging backgrounds. That's a euphemism for murderers and torturers. We're relying on their goodwill. Look, the question of how many people, how many SIV holders, how many Americans tears at the heart. And Lord knows we want them all back. But what tears at the mind is the celebration of terrorism that is going on around the world. The Taliban's hold will be strengthened by the fact that terrorists all over the world will descend on Kabul and celebrate the victory over the Americans. This is the really frightening thing. Let's get our guys out. Let's get the folks out who helped us. But goodness knows we are facing a very, very bad situation. Mike McCall had it right, ranking member on the committee. He said this was betrayal and unconditional surrender and a scandal.
Harold, Secretary Blinken, as well as Democrats on the committee, did point back to the Trump administration numerous times in this testimony today. Take a listen to a piece of that.
When President Biden took office in January, he inherited an agreement that his predecessor had reached with the Taliban to remove all remaining forces from Afghanistan by May 1st of this year. Upon taking office, President Biden immediately faced the choice between ending the war or escalating it. Had he not followed through on his predecessor's commitment, attacks on our forces and those of our allies would have resumed, and the Taliban's nationwide assaults on Afghanistan's major cities would have commenced.
We've talked about it a lot, Harold. It seems an interesting argument. Your thoughts on it?
Well, first, thanks for having me on. Look, I think that point there he made is one worth noting, particularly for this conversation. I would agree with Brit Hume that the May 31st or May 1st or August 31st date, those were things that did not have to be adhered to, maybe. Because the agreement called for 5,000 Taliban prisoners to be released. It called for the Taliban not to attack U.S. soldiers as long as we adhere to the agreement. So what I heard Secretary Blinken saying there was that if they didn't adhere to the agreement, that perhaps and maybe the Taliban would violate their part as well. But let's be clear, they mishandled this exit. This could have been handled much better. I'm encouraged that Democratic committees in the Congress, Democratic chairs of committees are leading oversight of this and are asking very probing and tough and honest questions. And I thought Secretary Blinken probably should have come down today to the House, but I thought he was very candid, honest, and frankly, lengthy with some of his answers.
Brit, the politics of this and where this goes, we're in the moment here. There are people on the ground we're trying to get out. But the impact on this administration, this president, from what both sides say, was pretty hasty and screwed up.
Yeah, this is not a foreign policy disaster that a lot of people really disagree on. There were sort of faint attempts in that hearing today to defend the administration in this or that way, but nobody's really arguing this was well done or wisely done or in the end successful to the extent the administration continues to claim that it is. I think it's a stain on this administration. It is one that will endure, and my own view is that this has placed Joe Biden in a new light in the eyes of most Americans who, despite the fact that he had that long career and was vice president, they didn't really know him that well. This was his first big one, and he whiffed on it. And I think it's left him damaged, not just because of how badly the departures from there went, but also because of how poorly he handled it in the aftermath.
One last thing. A lot of the Republican questioning ended with one familiar refrain, and that is resign. Take a listen.
I resign. Those would be the two words I'd like to hear.
He's not going to resign, though. You know that.
I know that. They're too arrogant to resign.
What's something realistic that you want to hear?
There's nothing else that I want to hear from him.
And it is so greatly unfortunate, the consequences, and I believe that you, sir, should resign. That would be leadership.
Bill, I think Congressman Mast is right that there's probably not a chance that Secretary Blinken is going to resign, but there haven't been any resignations or falling on swords in this whole deal.
No, I don't think there will be. The real resignation should be the President of the United States. This was his game. Look, Ryan Crocker, former ambassador to Afghanistan, said to me in an interview, he said, look, Trump made a mistake in dealing with the Taliban, but Biden owns this 100%. This was his decision, and it's a disaster. And a briefly, disagreement with my friend Harold Ford, rare. But I don't think the Democrats were probing. I think they were really getting behind Joe Biden, attacking Republicans and trying to blame it on Donald Trump. Well, that's a new card. Blame it on Donald Trump.
Last thing, Harold, do you think that the Trump administration would have done the same thing here in this exit?
Look, I don't know. I hope not, and we all would wish they would not have. But as we talk about betrayal here for one moment, let me just remind everybody, for 20 years, we thought we had a partner in the Afghan government, which turned out to be on its best day, wildly incompetent, and on its worst day, both incompetent and corrupt. So there's a lot of blame to go here, and I think that as we get through some of these hearings and the accountability begins to fall, let's let the chips fall where they may. Let's learn from this era, and let's ensure and try to ensure going forward that we don't make the same mistakes.
Yeah, from covering the Pentagon, many military leaders and administrations, both kinds, Republican and Democrat, said that Afghan military and the government was up to snuff at some point. Okay, panel, thank you. We'll see you later in the show.